Hello everybody and welcome back to the Backseat Fighter YouTube channel. I'm your host Charlie Bins. Thank you so much for all the support on the last two videos talking about Sean O'Malley versus Merab, my predictions there. What a result for Merab Dvalishvili, by the way. And of course, the watch along we did for that fight, it was crazy, it was hilarious. Some silly comments all around.
Her back and her shoulders, bro, and her biceps. To me, I'm sorry. Free kick, I see.
But thank you, so much for the support. Please subscribe if you are new here, and if you're coming back to watch another video, thank you so much. It's great to see you again. But today we're talking about Usman versus Buckley going down this weekend. Kamaru Usman coming back after 2 years off from the sport, healed up with his body, and we've got the up-and-coming welterweight machine in Joaquin Buckley. I just watched the Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev fight in preparation for this video, and it's just hyped me up because it was such a great fight. Now, context. Kamaru Usman came in 9 days' notice, moved up a division to face Khamzat Chimaev. I also believe it was Khamzat Chimaev's debut at middleweight officially after that whole Kevin Holland fiasco happened as well. Crazy, we all know. Khamzat was actually supposed to fight Nate Diaz, if you guys remember. But in this fight with Usman, obviously Khamzat comes out firing, gets a 10-8, dominant grappling round, ground and pound, just keeps Usman occupied the entire time. But then on 9 days' notice, Usman, in my opinion, goes out and wins the last 2 rounds. But it should have been a draw, in my opinion. Amazing fight. And the reason I'm talking about it is, he's back. That guy is back. Usman, the former pound-for-pound #1, the former welterweight champion, one of the most dominant championship runs I've ever seen. Those 2 fights with Colby Covington, the 2 fights with Masvidal, that knockout of Masvidal might be the hardest right hand I've ever seen landed in UFC history.
And of all the superlatives...
I mean, it literally like Jorge's Masvidal. Chin flew into the air, orbited the sun 25 times and came back. And obviously the fights he's had in his career. I mean, even that performance he had against Gilbert Burns during the pandemic, finishing with a jab, that celebration, like, take what from who? I mean, he's the coldest ever in terms of welterweight for me, that I as long as I've been really deeply analyzing the sport. I mean, obviously GSP is commonly regarded as the best welterweight of all time, but you have to understand Kamaru Usman is in that conversation. Going through his career a little bit there, tries to put into context the level of legend that is finally returning to the sport, and somebody who obviously doesn't have to financially nor in terms of completing their fight legacy. I mean, Kamaru Usman's already up there, but who he's facing is a very interesting opponent for him to come back to. Joaquin Buckley. When we think of Joaquin Buckley, we think of the craziest knockout we've ever seen.
They're so even on total strikes at the moment.
We think about a highlight striker, but for a while, it was a guy that was at middleweight and getting beaten sometimes, getting knocked out, winning some, but getting knocked out as well, right? I mean, I think about Kevin Holland knocking out Joaquin Buckley. For me, Joaquin Buckley, since this move to welterweight, has become a different level of fighter. In his own words, those guys were too big. I remember watching the Believe You Me podcast with Michael Bisping and obviously Anthony Smith at the time. Joaquin Buckley came on. He said, honestly, I'm sick and tired of getting knocked out. That's a level of honesty, analysis, especially in the public eye, that I don't see fighters usually make. Come down to welterweight, and since then, this guy has been on an absolute tear. 6-fight win streak, and I think he's become a legend killer. I think about, obviously, he comes down, gets those 2 fights against Flalu and Morono, but then he's just been on a tear of taking down the veterans of the welterweight division. Vicente Luque. In that fight, Luque pulls guard, and you just see the level of aggression from Joaquin Buckley to get the ground and pound finish. And I think that's where a switch flipped in his head as, I can actually go make a run at a title here, because you saw how emotional he was. He was crying. He was so overwhelmed and overcome with emotion in that moment that, for me, that must have been the moment he thought, I'm ready to become elite fighter in the UFC and possibly challenge for a title. Do you see him go and put a clinic on against Ruzi Boyev, a guy who is a veteran, maybe not a legend in terms of what he's done in the UFC, but then you see him go and knock out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson with an incredible technique and a devastating knockout.
Coiling himself, just coiled. Boom! It looks like old Mike Tyson, right? When Mike would be dipping.
Most recently, he absolutely decimated Colby Covington, made him look awful, and in my mind, retired Colby Covington as an elite fighter completely. I mean, it was utter devastation. and a little bit disgusting. I mean, there's that before and after photo of Joaquin Buckley shorts before and after fighting Colby Covington. They start off pearly white and end up hellish red. I mean, it's absolutely insane the damage he put on Colby Covington. Contextualizing where these two fighters are coming into this fight from in terms of Usman, who he has been in this sport pound for pound number one, coming off an incredible short notice performance against Hamza, in my opinion, should have been a draw, now taking 2 years off with a healed body, and Joaquin Buckley, who's been on a tear and taken out the veterans of the welterweight division, and now he's fighting the ultimate accomplished veteran in Kamaru Usman. I'm going to make my prediction after this final point, but I need to, go back to what I mentioned there. It has been 2 years for Kamaru Usman. What does that mean? What do we think we're going to see differently from Usman? Ali Abdelaziz came out in a recent interview and said this is the first time Kamaru is entering a fight week healthy in years, saying he's had to get injections in his knees, in his shoulders, just to make it through the excruciating pain he's suffering and make it through these fights. When you put that into context, if we trust Ali Abdelaziz in this instance, wow, the performances he's been putting on with bad knees, as we know, as a fan base, as media, and the UFC, everybody knows that Kamaru Usman has had problems with his knees. Been brought up in press conferences, used as trash talk against him. But now he's entering a fight for the first time, apparently, with none of these injuries really ailing him or hindering him in the same way that they have done in the past. What do we actually do with that information? Because he is also 38 years old now, and he has been out of the octagon for 2 years. Is ring rust a thing in your opinion? For me, I think it has to be. Anytime you take yourself out of such a high adrenaline environment for long enough and you put yourself back in there, your body, your mind, your consciousness doesn't adapt back in the way it used to. I think Kamaru Usman is going to go in there and look good. And I think Joaquin Buckley is on absolute tear with all the momentum, staying active. And I do think out of his last 4 fights, this is definitely the biggest challenge Joaquin Buckley has faced. For me, it's absolutely insane that part of me thinks that Usman is going to lose this fight. There's something about a mentality shift in Kamaru Usman. Sometimes when somebody has reached the top of the sport, multiple defenses, been in conversations for the greatest ever in their division, and then they take a couple of losses. Obviously, he took the head kick from Leon Edwards, heard around the world, comes back in London on the pay-per-view card. I was there, loses again by decision to Leon Edwards, and then puts on an admirable, almost wins if there's extra rounds in my opinion against Khamzat Chimaev, but that's still 3 losses in a row, carrying those injuries that Ali Abdelaziz is referencing, and takes years out, figures out different areas of his life, develops an identity away from being a champion, away from being that guy with a target on your back. Once you get that pressure lifted off of you, it makes you develop or have to develop outside the octagon and kind of become less attached to your career in that sense. This is a mentality shift that I've seen Usman talk about in a most recent upload on Freestyle Bender. His mentality towards the game is not the same. He still wants to go in there and win, but he doesn't feel that pressure anymore to be champion and be attached to it and defend and constantly looking over his shoulder. On a human level, holistic level, that's absolutely fantastic for somebody like Kamaru Usman. I think he's already accomplished everything you can do in this career. He doesn't need to add anything to his legacy to be a great in this sport. There's less pressure on himself to be world champion. How is that going to affect his performance against Joaquin Buckley? Is he still going to be the same Kamaru Usman? So my head says yes, but in my heart, I don't know. And you'll know within the first 10 seconds of the fight on Saturday night. So, official prediction, Kamaru Usman has all the technical abilities to go win this fight. His hands and his striking looked so good in that last Khamzat fight. I mean, he was throwing the leg kick, beautiful rear teeps to keep Khamzat's pressure off. Lovely 1-2s, an amazing right hand in the second round, 1:11 seconds. Kamaru Usman just unloads a right hand on Khamzat, and I think that completely changes the rhythm of the fight because he starts to land big shots on Khamzat and probably recognizes in that moment that he can push a little bit harder than he thought, considering he was only there on 9 days' notice. But at the same time, there is something to be said truly about momentum and youth in the game of MMA. When we look at somebody like Joaquin Buckley, we're looking at an explosive, aggressive, creative striker. The truth is, I can see this fight going either way. I can see Usman looking fantastic and dominating Joaquin Buckley, or I can see the young man, the young lion, defeat the elder statesman. I feel like Joaquin Buckley is just on a mission who's just seeing blood, wants to get that belt, has all the hunger in the world. And Usman whilst he has that fire still in him to compete and fight, it's not like his life, his happiness, his whole self-worth depends on beating Joaquin Buckley on Saturday. But you never know. I mean, I never want to doubt Kamaru Usman. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. You know, him, Israel Adesanya, Francis Ngannou, what they did as the Three Kings is one of the greatest periods of the sport's history. I guess my worry is that the fact that people like me, maybe himself, has now realized that he doesn't need to add to his legacy. And how will that comfortability knowing a loss doesn't affect how people view him or how he should view himself, how will that affect his performance? For the boys, for the culture, for the heart, I'm going Kamaru Usman to win on Saturday, but I would not be surprised if Joaquin Buckley is able to pull it out and maybe even finish Usman. I mean, it might be crazy as that. We'll see. Let me know what you guys think. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I've just said that last sentence. But yeah, if you like the video, please give a like. It helps me so much. Subscribe if you are new. We've got cool things coming. We're growing in this space. And I think we're just the best MMA content in the game right now. And I'll see you very, very soon with more content. And especially watch for that watch along of this fight coming next Monday with crazy reactions to see whatever happens. And you'll see me screaming and laugh with my friends again. See you then.